May the words that I speak and the thoughts and wanderings of all of our hearts draw us closer to God, who is our rock and our Redeemer. So we like to get away. A lot of us do anyway. Out, perhaps not into the raw wilderness, but we like to go and get out of town for a while. Some of us bring what we can carry in our backpacks, or in our cars, or in our 43-foot Class A's. Whatever it is, when you pare down what you have and get away from it all for a while. Jesus does that too, heading out into the wilderness, intentionally getting away from everyday life to focus, to listen for God, to be drawn near to God. But it's also practice. Practice in the sense of going through something in advance, like a fire drill, so that you know what it's going to feel like when you really have to do it. People are evacuating their homes due to fire and flood on both sides of our continent yet again this week. That Joel passage felt like it was being written by someone this week in California. So close to home, so real. The smoke from those fires is in our air. Because real life sometimes does that to us. So it's really good when we already know we can survive with what we've brought with us. When we already know that we have all that we need. Because sometimes real life is really, really hard. It's been a rough week for some of us. And I don't even need to know what's going on in your life right now to know that that is true, that some of you will have had a rough week, some rougher than others. Some of us have heard bad news about a friend's illness. Some of us have felt overwhelmed by the conditions in the world. Some of us have had to face up to issues around abuse or addiction or illness or diminishing capabilities. Some of us have heard that illness is spreading in the communities where our families live. The reality is that some of us are going through a hard time. And that is always true. Sometimes we know about it. Sometimes our grief and our pain is public. And sometimes it is not. It can come with secrecy and shame that we can't talk about. The administrator in the Conference of Alberta Northwest, which no longer exists, although I think the administrator still does, she might have retired, her tagline on her email, so every email she sends, it always says, where yours says, sent from my iPad, hers always says, be gentle with everyone because everyone's going through something. See, that is one of the harsh realities of the world, and one of the things that the church can help to address. But we have a lot to overcome to get there. Because we also have a long cultural history of making ourselves be at our best when we come to church. And this isn't all bad. Some people choose to dress up to come to church, and some people don't. But beyond what we wear, there's another question of what we put on ourselves. Do we put on our I'm okay face? It's more important than whether we shined our shoes. Do we put on our I'm over it, I'll be fine face? Or can church be a place where it's okay to not be okay? Life is sometimes hard. And even if life is really good for you right now, maybe, everything is coming together beautifully in the way you were hoping things would be. The pandemic is only a minor setback, or perhaps you're even enjoying having the extra time to pursue new hobbies, and maybe things are really good. But even if that's true, we've all had a bad day. Some of us have had a bad year or a bad decade, or more. But who we can be as church, who we often choose to be, because we choose to reach out, is someone who says, it's okay for you not to be okay. It's creating the space around yourself where it's okay for people not to be okay. It doesn't mean that every time that you see somebody that they have to be upset and crying, but it's okay if they are. It's also okay if they just need some normal time and to forget about the hard things, that's fine. But we make space for things to be difficult. We make space for people to have a bad day. I don't know how many of you get the Broadview magazine, which is the United Church Observer. And even if you get it, if you've read it, I got it this week, and it said in the top, this thing keeps slipping, it said in the top, something along the lines of the crisis in casseroles. And my first response was, there's enough going wrong with the world, don't mess with my casserole. But I read the article, and what it was actually talking about was the way that when things are going wrong, someone just shows up with a casserole. And the story describes, and sorry for those of you who have read it, or spoilers for those of you who are waiting to read it, that they mention is that, something horrible had happened in their life. I think perhaps it was the death of a child, a public grief that everyone knows about. And someone showed up with a blueberry crisp. I might have the details wrong, so you have to read it to check me up on this. And in that terrible, sad first day, apparently this grieving mother just had a spoon and she just took a bite of it every time she walked by. And she said, that crisp got me through that day. Because every time I tasted it, I was reminded that somebody cares. And we have a formal casserole ministry in this church, that we reach out to people in their times of struggle and give them some food to eat. And it's a part of what you do when you show up and you've got a casserole and you don't know what to say. But when you were throwing in those frozen peas and chopping up that chicken and opening that can of soup, you were saying, I'm sorry this happened to you. I care. I'm here for you. All of these physical demonstrations of love that we normally do to help people get through a hard time are harder to do right now. It's harder to sit down over a cup of coffee, even if you're together, but you're not able to sit that closeness and you can't reach out and hug people the way you normally could. But we can still be there for each other. Check in with each other. Recognizing that we can't fix everything. That sometimes things are hard. Sometimes there is no good news, or that's how it feels. But even when things are at their worst, you can still show up with a casserole, give a phone call, reply to someone's post on Facebook, let them know, send something through the mail, let them know that you're thinking about them. Because we are the people of God. We know what it is to be in the wilderness. Our faith teaches us and reminds us about what it is to be in the wilderness. And so when we are in our personal wildernesses, we can count on each other. May it be so. Thanks be to God. Amen.